Fallout 4 is one of the most well-known games in the Fallout franchise, coming out all the way back in 2015, which doesn't sound like too long ago, but if you can't remember, that was the last time a girl even looked at you. The Platinum Trophy for Fallout 4 has 51 trophies included within, and takes an average playtime of 70 hours to complete. So it is definitely one of the longer Platinum grinds in terms of boring story length.
What did he say?
The reason it takes so long to do this is both because of the game's length in general and the fact that you need to do most missions for all three of the game's storylines. The different storylines are for the Minutemen, the Railroad, and the Brotherhood of Steel. The first stage of the Platinum Trophy is to just play through the entire game, siding with whatever faction you want at the end, and to also make multiple save slots while playing so you can go back and choose the other endings of the game, in order to try and make it as fast as possible. Also, I started off with one trophy done since I played the game for like 30 minutes before. We began Fallout 4 by first making our character. Now I wanted to make him look as closely as I could to myself so I can really get the main character disorder going in my life, but decided that would be silly since then I could get my identity stolen. So I went with this guy who looks like the most typical Chad in 2023's acceptable society.
I am dead inside.
Next, we got to mingle with the family for a few minutes before talking to the man who came to the door and essentially told us that we have free access to the local vault, since the world is about to just get nuked to hell. And that is exactly what happened a few seconds later. So the whole family scattered over to the vault, and as we were entering, the poor vault salesman guy wasn't even allowed in. And I'm not gonna lie, I found that hilarious. It's always fun to watch those around you suffer.
Hey, yo!
We then took a big old nap and got frozen in the vault, which is probably not the expectation we had when entering. And during our nap, we awoke for a few seconds to watch as some people came in and stole our baby son right out from our wife's arms. She also got sent to the lobby a little earlier than expected. Man, this truly was the villain origin story I've been waiting for. My life's plot is now exactly how I imagined. Anyways, we eventually got awoken by the gods from the cold nap, and it was kind of strange because nobody else woke up. I guess they must still be getting caught up on all of my other Platinum Trophy videos I have made in the glorious Platinum Trophy playlist that you should definitely watch. Anyways. This next part of the game was just a little intro into Fallout 4's amazingly good yet bad combat system, and a little peek into how terminals work and all the items and all that good stuff. We also got our personal own Pip-Boy. And no, it's not a small child from the black market. Instead, it's an oversized Apple Watch that shows us all the goodies from any other game, like our inventory, missions, skill tree, and anything else you could dream of. We then made it out of the vault into the real world and really get to begin the amazing open world of Fallout 4. So after being blinded from the sun, which is pretty much how I react when I go outside once a week, we head back to the crib and find that all the annoying neighbors are now gone. And I honestly hope they are dead.
Oh, okay, goddamn.
But we also saw Codsworth, who is still kicking it after all of these years. Good to see that his unpaid labor continues even without us. Anyways, the first mission of this game was to go to Concord, which is a big old city nearby and has some Minutemen there, who are the first quest givers of the new day and age, and supposedly are trying to make the world a better place. But we had to help them clear out the streets that were full of raiders, so I don't know how effective they expect to be when they can't even accomplish this easy task.
That's what I'm saying.
Anyways, we had a nice chat with Preston Garvey, who is the Minutemen leader, and he got this position because he always finishes within a minute like a true businessman. We then went up to the roof and threw on power armor, which is supposed to help us become super strong. Yet, I died a few seconds later to this giant mutated enemy, which can only be described with one word. What the fuck? The mission then had me escort all the Minutemen over to my crib, and I let them crash there since their organization is almost worth as much as FaZe Clan is. And Preston Garvey was so thankful, he gave me my first new trophy of the day. I then continued to progress the story until I ended up on a mission which had me infiltrate and take out a ton of raiders at the Corvega assembly plant. And right when I first arrived, I reached level 5 for another trophy. Ridding this place of raider scum, however, was much harder than I imagined. It took me quite a while to do, especially since I played this game like it was Call of Duty and just ran in balls out screaming, "Let's do this." But I eventually got them all, and it was kind of sad because it was then super quiet and nothing really happened, which led the voices to return.
Retard or what?
I also didn't know fast travel was a thing for like half of this game, so I ran back to the Sanctuary Outpost, which is where my crib used to be. And I met up with Garvey again, and he gave me another trophy. While here, I then tried to make my place a little bit more exciting for the citizens and tried to make them not want to die inside so much, even though the world was pretty much screwed. I guess my efforts were enough because I got another trophy. So in usual fashion, we went off again to do some more tasks for the Minutemen, and while on one, I tried to assault a ton of homeless people, but Lord have mercy, they were on that perk 44 because I got my ass handed to me so hard that I ended up just giving up trying to fight them and ran away crying. This stage of the game was quite boring because we pretty much just established our first settlement area, so I'm skipping ahead to when we finally got to Diamond City, which is the most popular area of the game. And this is where a lot of quests and other things are done. We got in with this girl named Piper by completely BSing our way through security, and I have got to say, I'm excited to see more of her in the future of this game's story.
Yeah, that brother's starving.
But anyways, the goal of why we came here was to find this detective who we thought could help us find Sean, who is our son that got stolen by the evil people in the beginning of the game. And that is also the entire premise of Fallout 4's story, simply finding our son who is probably dead, and has been for a very long time. Before we can do that though, the detective was actually captured, so we are sent off by his ugly secretary to find him. I also got completely smashed like your girl did on Halloween before this. The detective was for some reason held up in the subway, and no, not the restaurant. And this guy better be worth it because I had to fight like an entire army to get to him. But I finally found the son of a bitch, and time has not been good to the lad. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's not even human anymore. But we don't judge, it is the fallout for Christ's sake. And I got a trophy from this guy's mission, so I am now in love with him. We then found out that the detective Valentine has been after some guy named Kellogg for the longest time, and saw Kellogg with a kid that could have been Sean quite recently. So we tried to break into his house in Diamond City to find evidence, but needed his key first. And I asked the mayor directly for it, but my risk skill wasn't high enough, and I got rejected pretty badly by him. I then also tried to do the same tactic on his secretary, and she also shut me down. But honestly, I'm not surprised. No woman has ever actually wanted to be with me, so I understand. Oh yeah, and she also made me give her 200 caps for the dumb key, which is an insane price. And for that same price, I could have bought a gun and shot her instead. So we made it to Kellogg's house, and whilst there, found some evidence, which we then had our doggy track for us. And I gotta say, this dog carried the game for me, to be honest. The rest of this mission had us literally just follow the dog as he sniffed around for Kellogg's trail, and while I was doing this, I had a reenactment of the Detroit Become Human scene with Connor, and I helped some dude kill his replica. Between you and me, I had no clue who was telling the truth or not. But I did reach level 10 for another trophy right after. We then kept following the dog, and Jesus, this boy tracked him across the entire country, spanning days and nights until we finally reached our destination, which was some random building Kellogg was all holed up in. This same building I also struggled for eternity to try and find my way into, and I got in finally. But then I reached my first terminal hacking requirement and had absolutely no clue in the world on how to do it. I thought there must have been some sort of strategy to it, but ultimately found out that it's entirely luck, and you just have to try over and over. What a great game. Anyways, we confronted Kellogg once finding him at the bottom of the building, and he told us that Sean was in a safe place. Now I thought he meant he killed Sean, so I lost my mind and decided to throw hands. Sadly, again, I found out super fast and died many times because I was very unprepared for the fight. Eventually, though, I did get the upper hand on him, and with the use of many grenades, I made him become nothing but atoms spread out all over the room. And the Brotherhood of Steel even made an appearance with their giant ships just flying over us all and making us feel inferior. But then again, that is always fun to do to others, so I see where they're coming from. I then got a trophy for the completion of that mission. Next, we had to figure out what Kellogg actually knew about Sean and the Institute, which is where he sent him. So Valentine had a great idea to take his brain over to this doctor lady who can see memories or something neat like that. We then got to go into the simulation itself and experience a ton of lore about Kellogg and his wonderful life until finally seeing memories with Sean, and him sending the boy to the Institute with a courier agent. So now we know how the Institute gets accessed, with teleportation. And thankfully, I know a lot of tall black guys who could easily get us in. But before that, I got the trophy for the mission's completion. So now we need to get into the Institute to find our son Sean, and we do this by going into the glowing sea, which is the super radiated zone of the Fallout 4 map. And at the very end of it, it's the ex-Institute scientist named Virgil who will supposedly help us get there. Anyways, I made it to his fine home and struck a deal with him in which I would find the cure for his skin disease or whatever the hell's going on with him, and in return he would basically spill the beans on how to make a teleporter. I love how realistic this game is. I also went for this pickpocket trophy, which has you drop a grenade into the pickpocketer's inventory and then watch as they blow up. And I did it on his poor robot servant, which actually worked and gave me the trophy. The first step in making this teleporter was to get a courier chip so I had access to the Institute to begin with. Couriers are basically the best Institute robots they have, and they get access to teleport to and from the place with free will, essentially. So the next mission had us go after one, and it had a ton of combat. And when I say a ton, I mean it took me over a half an hour to get all the way to the courier and fight him. Yet again, I was super underprepared for this mission, and I honestly didn't think I'll be able to do it. But I ended up just peeking and shooting over and over on him until I beat the courier and then looted his body, which gave me his chip and a trophy. I then had to go build the whole big old teleporter, which wasn't too bad, and I got a trophy for doing so while placing down a ton of generators. I then got the whole thing all powered up and was straight up teleported like a Chad into the Institute and received another trophy. While in the Institute, we found the quote-unquote Sean child who was just chilling in this prison-like room. He also claimed not to know me, and honestly, I'm fine with that. The kid was super annoying. In fact, if this glass wall wasn't here, I would have probably got a late abortion. But then this old guy called Father walks in and says the magic word which shuts down Sean because he was a robot. Wow, what a plot twist. But seriously, who calls themselves Father? This man has got to have a massive ego, and is definitely compensating for something else. And the old guy is apparently my real son, Sean, which would actually make sense because we got refrozen once he was taken in the intro of the game. Anyways, I thought it was hilarious whenever these two talk because Father constantly calls me Father, and it's just a giant fever dream to be honest. But basically, he wanted us to join the Institute and all this crap, and we get a ton of missions with the Institute also. The first one had us go and talk to all of his minions, and we got a trophy from it. We then joined some courier Terminator guy in a battle zone and had to bring back some rogue Institute robots called synths. And honestly, this whole reading code thing to shut them down is hilarious because they just go limp like my cock. Anyways, I did some other missions but got 0 trophies until I talked to father, I guess, and he gave me a wicked side eye but a trophy also. The next trophy gotten pops after a lot of extremely long missions, and one which had us and one of the Institute main character workers go into this tower full of people from the Brotherhood of Steel. And while there, we had to not only fight a ton of them, but also steal a radioactive core from this machine at the bottom. And then as we tried to get back to the elevator, we had multiple fights with super powerful enemies. And I'm not gonna lie, I ended up hiding like a little sissy lala because I was afraid of dying, and did indeed do that a lot in this mission. I also got made the Institute leader after that and got a trophy. Since this is our first playthrough, we decided to side with the Minutemen, which means we get to play through the entire game with the Institute because they don't really care too much about the Minutemen. So I went and basically just had to eliminate all of the railroad people and then all of the Brotherhood of Steel people to ensure that there would be no attempts at power takeover while I'm the leader. These 2 missions also led us into the very ending of the game, which was low-key kind of lame with the storyline. We literally just took out both factions and then blew up a thingy at the end of the game. But I got 2 trophies, so it's chill. I then decided to not go and do all the other endings of the game quite yet, but instead go do every single other trophy before that so I could just do the endings and then be done with the platinum. And yeah, this sucked. This was awful. But the first trophy I got was for allying with 3 different settlements, which is very easy. And all you have to do is basically go do their little intro mission until they feel like they owe you something. I then did the last few Minutemen quests that gave trophies, and I only received 2 from this. There's more missions you can do with them after, but none of them give trophies, so it's kind of pointless if you're doing it just for that. The next trophy I went after was pretty much just a 50 miscellaneous quest one. This is the longest grind in the game because these quests are kind of hard to come by, and I got a lot of trophies while attempting to grind this out. The first was for reaching level 25. Another was gotten after talking to some withering away cancer patient who definitely needs to moisturize. And I finally ended up eliminating 300 human enemies, which would probably qualify me into the serial killer club. I also gathered 5 different friends, which is apparently hard to do in the Fallout. Continuing on with the miscellaneous quests also led me to discover 100 locations. I then took a detour into base building because another hard trophy is for getting 100% happiness. And while there, I did the 1,000 item trophy, which you can get very easily if you just constantly store junk at your home base and then transfer it all into your inventory at once. I'm not gonna lie, I got desperate for miscellaneous quests, so I bought the Far From Home DLC because I read somewhere that those quests counted as miscellaneous. And after 2 hours and 2 DLC trophies, I found out that they indeed do not. But while playing the DLC, I did get a trophy for eliminating 300 animal enemies, which did count towards the platinum. Then after like 3 hours more of random ass miscellaneous quests, I got the mercenary trophy and nearly died inside in the process. Like, that was actually so bad. The only redeeming thing about it was that you could pretty much fast travel everywhere, so it made that aspect not suck so much. And I'm not gonna lie, I was fed up with this game a tad bit, so I decided to do a few tiny and totally not dishonorable exploits regarding experience and duplication of resources. But I ended up getting to level 50 after placing down a ton of baseball statues because I'm just a huge fan of the game. Right after that, I then went and made a ton of drugs like Walter White and got a trophy for breaking the bad. While I was on the whole crafting streak, I also made a ton of weapon mods, which was way harder for another trophy. And then I did this super odd trophy, which just has you go back to Vault 111 to play some holo game available there. And I didn't even play the game. Next, I went and did the Kill 5 Big Creatures trophy, which was kind of vague because it's all perspective. Like, your mother is ginormous, but comparing her to your sister, she looks very small. Anyways, I beat the balls out of this ugly guy and got the trophy. And now I just had a few collectible trophies left before going after the other endings. So I went and found all the magazines. And then after that, I got both trophies for the bobblehead collectibles. And I did some cool trophy which has you run the bases for a quote-unquote home run. And this is done by just making a big old loop in Diamond City without stopping and touching all of the makeshift bases they have there. Next, I picked 50 locks and then had a super long conversation with that girl Piper from earlier. I actually tried to riz her up here, but my charisma is just pure fecal matter and she friend-zoned me. So much so that I actually reached max level with a companion in the game. So we must like literally just be the bestest friends ever. I'm seriously gonna jump in.
Oh my god!
Lord have mercy, the 100% happiness trophy in this game is literally just dumb. There is absolutely no way you get this naturally. It's impossible. You have to go so out of your way to please these idiot NPCs in this game, it's ridiculous. I quite literally spent 2 hours just sitting here resting and having time pass as I watched the happiness meter crawl from 95 to 100. It was awful, like actually awful. But it popped eventually, I guess, so it's whatever. Anyways, I needed to get like 1 or 2 more trophies, so I did the touchdown one next, which just has you get blown up by the blue-haired mutants, and you just need to ragdoll a lot for it to count. Sadly, it blessed me with a great spawn after, which made me pull out my hair a lot. And then I hacked 50 terminals, which was low-key ass, but not too bad since you can sort of exploit it by reusing the same terminal over and over if you're lucky. And finally, it was time to go back and replay the other 2 storylines I didn't already do. First off, I went to do the Brotherhood of Steel one, since it's a bit longer than the Railroad, but also a lot easier because they are low-key overpowered. I did the intro mission for them and got a trophy once I join the Brotherhood. The next trophy gotten in this mission line was called Blind Betrayal, and it has us go and eliminate the guy who recruited us to the Brotherhood because he was actually a synth the whole time, and the lad was low-key fine with it. In fact, I think he might have had some mental health issues with how okay he was. But I didn't flinch for a second and dropped his ass with no regrets, because trophies are everything and nothing would get in my way. Next trophy was awarded after we rebuilt Liberty Prime, which is the Brotherhood's giant robot that looks like the one from that one movie. Anyways, this thing is just super overpowered and is how we eliminate the Institute. It is also loaded up with nukes, and he hates communism, so he's a true homie for sure. But the trophy popped once we broke into the Institute and entered its gaping black hole. My favorite place. Anyways, that was basically it for the Brotherhood missions, and we were just watching the Institute get blown up, but then got cock-blocked because the game crashed. So I hopped onto MW3 since that campaign pre-order just released, and it's a giant mess already. But back to Fallout 4, it saved us right where we were, and this time it didn't crash, giving me a trophy for the completion of the Brotherhood mission line. I then did the Railroad mission line next because that was the only trophies I needed to be finally done with this game. So in same succession, I got the trophy for joining them. And honestly, after playing this game so much, you can really see how similar the missions are. In fact, the railroads are nearly identical in terms of what you do. Like in both, the first mission just has you follow some dude and it's extremely boring and dragged out. Gotta love Bethesda. The Railroad had pretty much zero missions in terms of trophies, so I just spent a lot of time replaying the Institute ones I had already done, which was just swell. But I did get a trophy after a while for telling the leader that she's autistic. And then we only needed one more trophy, which was gotten after taking out the Brotherhood of Steel. And this was literally the hardest part of the game. There's a brilliant spawn which throws you in right in front of 3 enemies who all have laser miniguns, and I quite literally died immediately each time since I was so low on HP already. Eventually I escaped them though after taking a ton of drugs, and then got confronted in the same spot in the next area by other enemies who managed to kill me also. I then went on the ship to end the mission, but also got shot out of that. So I think I died more in this span of 30 minutes than I did the entire game, and it was definitely not great. But we did finish that mission and got the final Railroad trophy, and then the Platinum right after. So Fallout 4. This was indeed a game. And that's all I'll say.